first of all, there's an escalation ladder. Okay, you just can't nuke a country for no particular reason. You have to have an excuse. And so what the Iranians have been doing for the past few decades, and this is like really important and really strategic and really smart of the Iranians, is they've refused to ever develop the possibility of a nuclear weapon. All right, there's really just fatwa against nuclear weapons, and that's very intelligent because guess what? If you have one nuclear weapon, the Israelis will nuke you because they have the pretext to nuke you. Okay, so remember, there's an escalation ladder. You have to move up first before you can do it. And everyone's like, well, the Israelis are crazy. I understand they're crazy, but they have a military bureaucracy. And this military bureaucracy has a military doctrine, we call it exemption option, which says that if we Israel feels ever threatened, we will nuke the world. We won't nuke Iran, we will nuke the freaking world, okay? So first of all, you want to maintain your nuclear arsenal to be able to have a credible threat. But also, like, this also means that the nukes have to be used for strategic purposes rather than tactical purposes. Okay, if that makes sense. But basically, you have to remember, like, militaries are bureaucracies, and they have a doctrine, and this doctrine determines how the bureaucracy operates. And they're not really flexible in this regard. The United States has a first strike option, but every other country has a deterrence option. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is that Russia is heavily invested in this war. It wants Iran to win. If Iran loses and collapses, Russia is in a lot of trouble, right? And this war, the way it's going, is benefiting Russia tremendously. Oil prices have shot up, and the Russians are laughing all the way to the bank. Sergei Lavrov have come out and said that they will support the Iranians any way they can. There's reporting from Washington Post that the Iranians are getting target intelligence from the Russians. And this is exactly what US and NATO did in Ukraine as well, right? So it's almost payback, right? So I think that as this thing progresses, Russia will slowly come in. And at one point, okay, Putin will offer Iran the nuclear umbrella, which means an attack, which means that a tactical nuclear weapon, if it's used against Iran, will be considered used against Russia. And Russia will respond accordingly to their military doctrine. So that's the second limitation. And the third limitation is people assume that the Israelis and Americans want to win this war. And according to eschatology, no, the purpose is to lose this war, right? So you would use nuclear weapons if you really want to win this war. But, like if you just want to force America out of the Middle East, you want to force America to retreat from the Middle East, and you want Israel to build the Greater Israel Project, then you don't need nuclear weapons. You don't need to win this war. You just have to drag this war out. Because, it's not, the Israelis aren't going to commit ground troops. That'd be insane. It's America that's going to commit ground troops. So what it's going to be, it's going to be a death match between the United States and Iran, and Israel is going to sit back and laugh their heads off, okay? I mean, like they might be attacked by the Iranians, but it's American military that's going to suffer the brunt of the damage. So from the Israeli perspective, there's actually no point in using nuclear weapons.
What's the likely role of a country like Pakistan with nuclear capability? Could they get unique about this?
Yeah. So remember, like what happened right before the war started is that Pakistan and Afghanistan went to war. Okay, and this is key because before we anticipated that Pakistan might be a wild card in this war, right? Because Pakistan is an ally to both Iran and Saudi Arabia. So during the 12-day war, Pakistan basically offered assistance to Iran. And then right afterwards, what happened, and this is key, is that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed a mutual defense pact, meaning that if Saudi Arabia were to be attacked, then Pakistan would have to come to its defense primarily with the nuclear deterrence option. But now that Pakistan is in war, it doesn't have to meet any of these obligations, right? So Pakistan is trying to remove itself from the equation. But we still know that America is conducting airstrikes from Pakistani airspace. And there's concern that the Americans will fund and support the Bullocks, this ethnic group, the Balakis in southeast Iran, and they've always had like ethnic conflicts with the Persians. Okay, but I think that Pakistan is smart enough to like stay away from this war.
To the extent that the desalination plants and the oil refineries are getting hit on both sides, on the Israeli, GCC, and Iranian sides, draw the picture in terms of the economic repercussion on the Middle East and also on the rest of the world, including Japan, Korea, China, India, Southeast Asia, and the rest of the world. I mean, we're talking about tons of, oil and gas flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. And, if you don't have oil, you can walk. But if you don't have water, you can't live. It's pretty existential.
Right. So remember, the Arabian Desert was mostly uninhabited or had a very sparse population for most of its history, right? And so it's only really with the rise of Pax Americana that these Gulf states became extremely wealthy. They had the protection of the American military, could sell their oil everywhere. And so this created the petrodollar system, which meant that the GCC nations could sell their oil in US dollars and recycle all this back into the American economy. And the American government would promise it military protection. And this worked out really well for decades. And it basically allowed the Gulf states to expand far beyond their capacity, right? So Riyadh, for the longest time, was a population of maybe tens of thousands, 100,000 at most, right? Now it's in the millions. But the problem with Riyadh and other places in the GCC is that it doesn't have clean water. It doesn't have access to fresh water. It doesn't have access to food. The GCC imports about 89% of its food from overseas. These desalination plants are responsible for 60% of its water needs, and it imports its knowledge workers from overseas. Okay, so it's a ridiculous situation. It's almost like a mirage. It's a hallucination. These places should not exist. Okay, so now what this war has done is it's punctured the illusion, the mirage of this place, and a lot of it is just based on delusion, right? It's like Dubai saw itself as the new Hong Kong or the new New York City, like this financial hub for the world elite. But the precondition is safety and stability, right? And that's gone. So like, guess what? When these guys leave, they're never coming back, right? I mean, like the reality is you're stuck between Israel and Iran, and these countries are never going away. So like, what's the point? So Dubai is dead. And the Iranians have really targeted the UAE, and I think that a lot of it is just this revulsion among the Islam world against the UAE as this like this den of Satan, really, right? I mean, like, what's Dubai known for? It's known for its glitz. It's known for its decadence. It's known for its corruption. So the UAE is basically dead. But Bahrain is now suffering from the strain of revolution because this is a Shia population ruled by a Sunni monarchy, and so there are a lot of these contradictions in the GCC. So the GCC is basically dead. I mean, the GCC is a construct of American empire. If the American empire dies, so does the GCC. All right. So the only way to save the GCC is if it's able to negotiate a ceasefire between America and Iran. And the GCC then becomes the client states of Iran. And why would the Americans allow that? They would rather have the GCC destroyed, right? So I mean, it's just I mean, like I think it's pretty clear.
So you think the safe haven premium has been taken out?
Yeah,
for the GCC countries.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think what's happened is the
illusion for a long time, or for good, or just for a short
good,
time.
For good, because the illusion has been shattered, and once you shatter the illusion, you can't resurrect it anymore.
Wow. Now, draw the picture for a post Gog and Magog world. Is the Pax Judaica world cast in stone, or
I think
will it still be? Yeah.
So I think Pax Judaica is pretty set. They've been planning this for like decades, okay? And this plan goes back centuries. And these are the most powerful people in the world. So they don't really care what we think. They don't really care if we know their plans. They're just going to implement it. All the pieces are in place for Pax Judaica. And so you have Pax Judaica, where Israel becomes this hub of global finance, global trade, global technology. And you're like, well, Israel doesn't have that many people. Well, guess what? They can import the labor from India, right? They can import tens of millions of people to work as laborers in this Pax Judaica. And so why is it before the war, Modi visited Jerusalem and signed all these wonderful agreements with Israel? Because what Israel wants is access to the cheap labor of India, right? And that makes sense for India because remember how China became wealthy is by exporting its cheap labor overseas, right? It had an abundance of cheap labor, and then it took people from the fields, put them in the factories, and that's how China became wealthy. Now, India, because of political issues, because of logistic issues, cannot actually replicate the Chinese miracle. But what it can do is export its people overseas to become wealthy, okay? And that's what it's doing in Canada. That's what and that's what it will do with Israel, okay? So that's a plan. So Indians, Chinese, and Filipinos will become the laborers of Pax Judaica. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to create the conditions for a world war between Israel and Gog and Magog, okay? And the biggest question is like, who is Gog and Magog? And again, we're not clear, okay? But the most likely candidates, if you just know scripture and if you've been following this eschatological debate, the most likely candidates are Russia and Persia. Okay? So think about this, where Russia is winning this war in Ukraine and it's now going to become a superpower. And then Iran, even though it will lose against America, it will be able to rebuild itself as a much stronger nation. And eventually, Russia and Persia will feel threatened by Israel, and this will lead to the war of Gog and Magog. So that, I think, is the general gist. But again, I mean, the thing about eschatology is that it's never that specific. It's never that detailed. It's a general framework, okay? So there will be a world war, the final war, and possibly a nuclear war. But who Gog and Magog is up for debate. Look, there are others who suggest that Gog and Magog is actually metaphorical, right? But I think these people take it literally, and I think if you take it literally, then it would be Russia and Persia.
How does China look at all this?
Yeah. Okay. So,
or how does it fit into the picture?
Yeah. So, in the eschatology, there are two nations that are not involved. Okay, and it's really important they're not involved. The first nation, of course, the United States. The United States is not involved in any of this. The second nation is China. All right, so let's talk about the United States. So the United States is this global empire, and the United States is not involved in this eschatology. And the United States could be a wild card because the United States could support Pax Judaica. The United States could also support Gog and Magog. Okay, so you want the United States out of this equation, and the way you do that is you manufacture civil war in the United States that occupies Americans for years, possibly decades, okay? But you have to remove America from the rest of the world and have them secluded in the Western Hemisphere, all right? So that's America. China, this is hard, okay? Because like everyone believes that China is a new superpower and the Chinese economy is certainly miraculous. But these eschatologists, they're occultists, all right? They know how the universe works. So they are almost trying to read the movement of stars. They're astrologists, trying to figure out how things come together. And no one ever talks about China. And the reason why is that in the grand order of the universe, China does not matter. China has never, ever mattered. China is a fiction of our imagination. The idea that maybe 1,000 years ago, China was this glorious Tang dynasty that was the epicenter of the world. That's just a thing in our heads. The ancients didn't know about China. They didn't really care about China. And the Chinese didn't know about the ancients, didn't know about the Persians, didn't know about the Jews, and they didn't really care, okay? So China is actually in its own world. And it's called the Middle Kingdom for a reason, because China is its own universe. And so China does not want to get involved in this war. And China doesn't want to be part of this eschatology. And it's possible, okay, that East Asia will suffer from a series of calamities that negates its involvement in the world. Okay, so I mean, like I know it's hard to understand, okay, but the occultists don't believe China is relevant. They don't think Southeast Asia is relevant, basically.
Wow. I want to go back to what you alluded to earlier. If Trump is a believer of chaos, then there's not likely to be a midterm because he's going to use this emergency powers, right? At the rate that, midterms are at the state level, but he's going to be able to use that emergency power to basically come or veto over the state level laws or regulations.
It is possible.
And what's the likelihood for a civil war, which you've alluded to earlier?
Again, the civil war in America is part of the eschatology. Honestly, I feel as though they're manufacturing a civil war right now. If you go back to Minnesota, right, in early January, right, when the ICE people went in, a lot of things that were happening seem overly provocative, right? So people may not remember, but before the ICE agents went in, there was a order to film as much as possible, to create as much social media content as possible. Why would you do that? That's kind of strange. You're an ICE agent. You're there to arrest criminals, right? Or illegal immigrants. No, you have to create, social media content. And the reason why is they're trying to draw attention to what's happening in Minnesota to try to inflame emotions. Okay. And remember, before this ICE operation, there was a movie that came out called One Battle After Another. Do you think that was an accident? Have you seen the movie? Do you really think this is coincidence? Do you really think this is a coincidence? Right? And the movie, for those who haven't seen, it's about this revolutionary group who's fighting these fascists who are trying to deport illegal immigrants. And these illegal immigrants are these saints that we must protect. And these fascists, these military people, they're all demons, basically. I mean, like that's literally the plot of the movie. And I watch it. It's very emotional. It almost makes you want to get involved in this war. It makes you want to fight for justice. And it's not an accident that right afterwards you have, this conflict between ICE and protesters in Minnesota. The Rainy Good shooting seemed a bit manufactured. Alex Petty, what was it, Petty or Pretty? Anyway, that was definitely manufactured. They basically hunted him down because he was a very vocal protester who had many run-ins with ICE before. And so they basically, if you just look at the video and what happened, it seemed as though they hunted him down. And again, that's all to create the preconditions for a civil war.
Jiang, if you came out saying exactly what you've been saying in the 90s, people would have labeled you conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Right? And on the back of what the mainstream guys are saying, right? But you've said that the mainstream guys are losing steam anyway. So how do you think the young generation is going to have to get used to stuff that would have been deemed conspiratorial as mainstream?
Look, I mean, the thing that's most important is to pay attention, because the reality is that this new generation does not pay attention. Even in school, they don't pay attention. I know because I'm a high school teacher, and they are distracted. Their minds are somewhere else, okay? They're on social media. They're constantly distracted. They're either distracted or they're depressed, okay? So, the amount of medication prescribed to young children nowadays is just absurd in America, right? These SSRIs. It's just absurd. What are you doing? You're frying their brains, really. That's what these drugs do. They actually destroy your capacity to think for yourself. It just leaves you numb and indifferent. Okay? But that's what they want. They want a numb and indifferent population that they can enslave, that they can rule over, who are complacent, who are complicit. Okay? The most important word nowadays that you're taught is to be complicit. Sorry, not complicit. Compliant. Okay? To be compliant.
Compliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? And what they want is compliancy. And that's what you're taught in school nowadays.
Talk. This is the last bit of the discussion. Talk a bit about what you're doing in the field of education. How do you think contemporary education ought to be like going forward?
I teach the great books.
Not just for China, but for humanity in general.
I mean, I teach the great books. I teach Plato, Homer, Dante, Milton, Shakespeare. I mean, what I try to do is I try to show students that the great books are a portal into the mind of the universe, into the divine consciousness. And the great books, it's a lifelong teacher. It's a lifelong guide into what true happiness is, into what true meaning and purpose is. And so I try to steer them into that direction. I've been trying for the past 30 years with very limited success. One thing I've learned recently that's really important is you must, regardless of the results, always speak this message, because the entire universe is watching what we do. We are all connected to the entire universe, and each of us can be a beautiful ray of light if we will it, if we choose it to be. So even though, I'm speaking, even though no one hears me, I should still speak anyway, because someone could hear me. If that person hears me and is willing to listen and open his ears, Jesus said, open your ears, right? That could change the person's life trajectory forever. All right. So I've been doing this for the past 20, 30 years. And only recently have I been getting a lot of attention because, as you point out, 10 years ago, everyone would think I'm insane. But now, because of these current events, they're forced to reflect. Okay. So I see myself as a messenger. I see myself as trying to spread a message of hope. And those who can hear will hear. And those who cannot hear won't hear. But I have a responsibility, I have a duty to my children, to my 3 young children, to speak out as loudly as possible and to spread the message to build a better world.
You could be spending time at a university. Why did you choose to spend time at a high school?
For me, what's most important is intellectual freedom, right? Do you work at a university? I mean, there's very little.
I do.
There's very little freedom in the university. I mean, you have to publish papers that conform to a certain set of values, but I mean, like, you can't really question the entire apparatus of society. You can look at some narrow issues and build on top of existing scholarship, and that will get you tenure. But if you were to say, no, I want to actually look at things fundamentally. I want to look at things broadly. I want to look at things as they are, as opposed to as to how they should be, and really try to get into the essence of truth. You'd be laughed at university. Everyone will think you're crazy. I know, because I work with professors.
Wow. I come from a place where I think the quality of teachers or teaching could be better. And I'm in a camp that believes that teachers are really playing the role of infusing imagination, ambition, and to some extent serendipity to the students, right? And I think you're a great example of that. Somebody who can actually inspire people so that they have imagination, ambition, and hopefully serendipity. What would be your message to people from the developing economies? For somebody that wants to elevate the quality of teaching, the quality of education, so that they get to be much more open-minded, they get to be much more humanist.
2 words: you matter. Okay? Don't think, oh, you know what, there's 8 billion people in the world, I'm just one person, so it don't matter. Don't think, okay, you know what, we're ruled by demons, they're too powerful, they can start any wars they want, they have nuclear weapons, I should just give up. Don't think like that. Think, I do matter, right? In Hermetic philosophy, there's something called the law of cause and effect, which means that everything is interconnected. The world, the universe is watching us, and it's all interconnected in that, if you choose to be a good person, that affects everything. Okay, it's a butterfly. It's like the butterfly effect, where just by choosing to be good, you spread good in the world. So you do matter, but you have to choose to matter. Okay, you have to believe that you matter. A very important principle in the world that's very that people don't really appreciate is that of free will. Well, and it was like, oh, Professor Jiang, Mr. Jiang, you are saying so many controversial things. Aren't you afraid for your own personal safety? And the answer is no, I'm not afraid, because you have to let Satan in the door. You have to make a deal with the devil before he can punish you for betraying him, right? If I choose, I don't want to be involved in this material world, I just want to teach and be left alone, I don't want to seek power, I don't want to seek fame and wealth, that there's nothing the devil can do to you. You have to be tempted by the devil first and foremost, okay? And I choose to live a life of enlightenment, wisdom, and virtue. And I'm having a huge impact because of my choice. And before, I was a nobody. Before, I was just a random high school teacher in China. And there are like millions of random high school teachers in China. But because I choose to exercise my free will to speak up, because I choose to matter, I am having influence in the world. Okay, so everyone does matter, but you have to believe that you matter and you have to fight to matter. And that really means about waking up and opening your mind to new possibilities and educating yourself. That is the future that we have to fight for.
Why do you think the world or even the universe lacking in love?
Because we've been fooled to believe that love doesn't matter. We've been fooled to believe that only the material world matters. We've been taught to believe that to show love to your children, you have to get them into private school. You have to get them into Ivy League. But you know what? Love is who we are. And if we just show generosity and compassion and openness to other people, then we create love. Okay, we bring God into this world. And that's a message that people have forgotten. And honestly, I think it's a message that the elite have purposefully hid from us.
Two final quick questions. How do you think the Trump-Xi meeting will turn out in April?
I think it'll be wonderful. I think it'll be spectacular. I think it'll be a grand bargain between China and the United States that restores a lot of bilateral relations. I think it's possible that China starts to buy more oil from the United States. I think like the meeting will go much more better than people anticipate. That's my gut instinct. I could be wrong, but that's my gut instinct.
Final one, quick one. Do you think Trump is going to be able to pull it off in running for a third term?
I would bet good money on it, yes.
Thank you so much, man. You've been kind with your time.
Thank you.